Hello, everyone. It is Professor Hamamoto, and it is July 5th, year 2022. I hope you had a wonderful holiday. It's nice to see you all here in the live chat, and also for people who are watching this on the replay. I welcome your comments, factual corrections, not the nitpicky type, but something that will take the discussion forward. And if you're a newbie, just hold your tongue. Watch the playlist a little bit before you comment because I'm not the same old that you might be used to. So today we have a lot of work today. I have a strict agenda. I hope to get through most of it. Please forgive me if I don't. I'll carry it over till on Thursday if I don't get to everything. And it all fits together. It may seem a stretch when we're talking about anime, right? Japanese anime, right? The animation. And someone like Linda Evangelista, who has re entered the news lately because of her quote unquote botched. And I say quote unquote because I'm not so sure that these are botched operations, but I'll get to that in a moment. So we have anime, manga, which is also a Japanese form, and I focus a lot on Japanese popular culture, not only because back in 1975, 76, I predicted, and I because I was doing cultural forensics, even then I was studying it at the master's level at Bowling Green State University in popular culture studies, and I talked about how Japanese not Japanese American, but straight up Japanese American or Japanese popular culture, including manga and film, music, and the popular arts were going to be a very important component in this globalizing economy, as it's called now. I don't think we used that term globalization back then, but it's even gained a greater salience than I even imagined what 40 years ago, way back when, in other words. So we're going to revisit that, especially this one anime, and I'm going to tell you how I got into it in a moment, called Tokyo Ghoul, which you will recognize as being part of the title of today's talk, Ghouls of the Emerging Bioeconomy. And then I'm going to show a brief clip on the Red Cross. When I say Red Cross, they have any number of private contractors that harvest blood on a nonstop basis. I'll return to that topic in a moment, right after I finish my list of to dos here, this agenda. Then I'm going to go into organ stealing. What does Linda Evangelista's problem, post operative problems with cosmetic surgery, have to do with organs stealing? I hope to make that clear in a moment, right? Because one of the ways that the people who are putting these schemes together, one of the ways they get away with it is that they spread the field so widely that we can't really connect one part end of the field to another. So we're protecting the goalpost, while we should be at the other side of the field playing offense. Well, that's not such a good analogy, but you get my point. Then I'm going to move as a continuation of the organ stealing because I'm going to be adopting the perspective of I don't want to call him a comedian. He's transcend, just like George Carlin. And Robin Williams. All of them have transcended the category comedian. Probably Dick Gregory, the most of the three people that I've mentioned, in that he ended up, I guess, the last part of his career, probably three-quarters of his career, he ended up as a social, a cultural commentator and very, very perceptive analyst. And you'll find that your your average comedian is much, much more perceptive and intelligent than the rest of the population, the real good ones. And Dick Gregory started to, once he abandoned his television and his club career, right? Nightclubs were used to be a real big source of income for comedians back in the 50s and 60s and 70s. And then more recently, just the HBO specials and the Chris Rock and Dave Chappelle, and of course, George Carlin did any number of HBO specials. That sort of took away from the club dates. So we're going to talk about Dick Gregory and give him his due recognition, not just only as a comedian, but as a harbinger, someone who's warning us about what is to come. And in particular, he was concerned not well, he was concerned about humanity in general, but he was most specifically focused on the African American community. And I mention this because the African American community is the target. Well, we know this from the days of Margaret Sanger, but it's become more refined, more focused, and more covert, right? The fact that there are so many Black celebrities, comedians, actors, talk show people, the Oprah Winfrey effect, if you will. And we already knew about the sports figures, right? That's fine and dandy. And of course, people who are in the news, anchor people in the media, and even in the White House, right? That itself should tell you that something is up. If you are, and I don't think most African Americans are falling for it. I think the rest of us are falling, not me, but not you, but the rest of the society is falling for it because then they can pretend to be surprised when their numbers start dwindling. And someone pointed out to me something curious, and I kind of noticed this in certain glaring cases, but she brought one more prominent example to my attention. But a lot of the quote unquote white leadership are getting married off to transvestite Black women, big Black women, right? And also the leadership cast of African Americans are also being married to transvestite Black females, BBWs, beautiful Black women, as their initials, right? So that's a phenomenon that we're going to have to watch closely, even though it doesn't really require much concentration. It's just right out in their face now. And this is all part of the program, right? Including organ transplant, cell tissue harvesting, blood banking, right? That's what I allude to when I talk about the international blood organ and cell lines that are being used as part of the pillar of the Great Reset of the new economy, right? That's why Klaus Schwab was put out there as an object of ridicule, especially in the part of supposedly independent media. They fall for these characters every single time. But Klaus Schwab doesn't really talk about this new tissue economy that's growing, uh, even as we're laughing at him, right? By the way, I was inspired over the holiday, 4th of July holiday, by this book that I purchased a while back. It's titled Tissue Economies. It's an excellent one. Unfortunately, both of them are leftist. One's the Five Eyes from Australia, one's an American, I think, probably gay. And I only mention that because the gay and lesbian communities are being brought into the tissue economy because by definition, they're not going to reproduce. They're going to take the babies that are spawned by Black couples or mixed race couples, whoever else, or acquire children from the so called third world, which is part of this economy, the adoption economy, which is another talk altogether. Um, and unfortunately, even though the analysis, for the most part, and I haven't gone through it with a fine tooth comb, although the analysis overall is accurate and it's credible, it's very well documented. This is an academic book; it's very well documented. They're looking at it through the constricted lens of Marxists and new Marxists, neo-Marxist socialists, and they refer to this as a problem of late capitalism. That's the operative phrase, late capitalism. If you hear anybody uttering that phrase, that formulation, late capitalism, that means that they read their new leftist economist, Ernst Mandel. They're British, primarily in the English language. And a lot of Americans, these are the new Marxists, the ones whose grandparents were Bolsheviks slash Sabbatean Frankists. These are the new left people that wrote about, usually associated with the New Left Review, by the way, that they refer to it as late capital, and that means capitalism. Um, and I can't really tell if they're embracing the tissue economy. I think they are because part of classic Marxism and New Left Marxism, even though they were called out for it, but part of classic Marxism is to solve the problem of the working class, the proletariat, by eliminating the working class, eliminating the proletariat. No proletariat, no more class conflict, and then you can have your communist utopia. Of course, it's going to be run by technocrats, oligarchs. We've been studying the science fiction. They're going to be science. They're going to be social scientists and um, specialists in anthropology. Right? George Lucas wanted to be an anthropologist when he grew up, and he's still waiting to become one. But you know that that's part of the Hugo Gernsback legacy with Heinlein and L. Ron Hubbard. These are all social engineer types, right? So I'm going to be working on that. Then I'll be circling back to another academic article, which I found fascinating. It's a good example of how academic research is not by any means off the table right now. It still has a great deal of relevance, especially if we continue along this line of inquiry that I've been pursuing for the last year and a half to show what's being brought in under the guise of the more obvious objects of ridicule, as I've alluded to earlier. It's the InfoWars, Steve Pachenik, QAnon, January 6th strategy. That's everybody laughing about with along with Milo Yiannopoulos and Dr. Steve Pachenik and Stu. What's his name? He's under indictment. The guy that's supposedly head of some patriot, quote unquote, patriot group. To laugh at the GLBTQ and then CRT, and then while we're doing that, this whole tissue economy is being brought in, right? So that's the function I serve, is to warn you that both sides bear watching. That includes ostensibly our side. And it's not because I'm prejudiced, because I come out of this world, but I believe that the academic world is going to present its own solution to the problems it created and will drive out the bad. The good money will drive out the bad in this case, which is CRT, and which is no longer about race or anything critical. And same with women and gender studies. They've ceased to be relevant something like 30 years ago. They are, I'll say it again, they are corporate occupied academic shells, right? It's a shell game. And if you're a grad student, I told you before, jump ship right away. All your favorite professors, they have their endowed chairs at Yale, right? Whatever it is, in comparative literature or in at Berkeley or at UC Santa Cruz. They have their endowed chairs, but does that mean they're going to help you or care? No, they're taken care of. You're going to be forced to fend for yourself for a reality that no longer exists. So I'm just giving you the heads up there. If you're at the early phases of your career, you can start changing right now. It's going to be difficult because to go against the orthodoxy is always tough, but it's so satisfying when you ultimately prevail over these dying forms of inquiry, and they are dying. They are moribund, right? Let's not celebrate prematurely, but they are on their way out. So I'm going to return to an article called Theaters of Surgery, which, by the way, I'm posting on my Patreon site. If you want the extra material, you got to sign up for my Patreon. It's a well illustrated article. It's written by a woman who is in the art department. Shows you where art scholarship is still relevant. It's not all about queering everything under the sun. Queering is their term. They're going to queer Michelangelo to abstract expression of everything. All the literature is going to be queered. And then the other people are going to be racializing. Oh, it's all about the oppression of black people, right? Caliban, Shakespeare, Orientalism, Edward Said at Columbia, all that, right? But this is a sign that it's beginning to change here, because this person who did the article titled Theaters of Surgery looks at the popular culture to show us how, for decades now, this tissue economy this blood cell line economy has been coming to the fore. And I created a short video, I hope it runs, to show you the art. I'll show it to you right now as I'm finishing up. And then I'm ending up with the beautiful Linda Evangelista. Even pronouncing her name is just so beautiful. It's mellifluous. My gosh, why did she even submit to this so called surgery, which was botched, seemingly botched? So you can find out some more information on Linda Evangelista on my Patreon. Look and find the article Theaters of Surgery and other materials if you want to read further, and you'll want to. Let's take a look. Let's get the pain out of the way first, because a lot of us really don't like this type of uh, academic inquiry, but let's give it a shot here. Here it is. Theaters of surgery. What does that mean? Well, you know that the in medical school, right? There's these. It's a theatrical experience. You're supposed to, as an intern or as a colleague, a surgical colleague, you're watching people down there operate on subjects, and it's a theater. It's called a surgical theater. So she's playing on the words there. And the subtitle is The Cultural Prehistory of the Face Transplant. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, I am throwing out the old term cosmetic surgery, and I'm replacing that nice phrase, seemingly innocuous phrase. It's really about female mutilation. In certain cases, there's people like Mickey Rourke, the notorious Trump hater, right? And some other people. There are a lot of men as well, but mostly women who are engaging in cosmetics. It used to be called plastic surgery, then it was cosmetic surgery. Now it's aesthetic surgery. But let's call it what it is. It's face transplant. And you know what the largest organ on the human body is, don't you? No, it's not that. It's the skin. That is the skin is an organ system. It's the largest one. So to engage in, and she calls it like it is. She calls it a face transplant. So let's take a look very quickly at some of the stills she takes from a classic film from France. I can't remember. I have a copy of it. I'll have to look at it again. It came out in 59 or 60. When I was a child, because this literature goes back much further than that, as we'll get to. But it's the English language translation is eyes without a face. No, we're not talking about Billy Idol. We're talking about the film version, which his handlers probably said, "Hey, Billy Idol, we're going to write a song around this to help normalize face transplantation, and you're going to help us, Mr. Rocker, Mr. Alternate, Mr. Fake Punk, Billy Idol. You are an idol. You're a graven image." So here's some of the photos. This is one of the stills. I don't know if you could read the caption there. Beautifully photographed. It's black and white, of course. Some of you object to that on an aesthetic level. Something's wrong with you if you insist that everything needs to be in color and colorized. My gosh, what a composition that is. I think the director probably had a background in photography, as they often did in the earlier days. Here's another still from the picture, and there's a pit bull on the right. You can see there's a mask there. It's the artificial face that's implanted there, and that's a pit bull. And there's animals. There's a scene where there's a bunch of screaming dogs because vivisection, animal experimentation it's not put out there explicitly, but it's implied part of this process of face implantation. And of course, you know where I'm going with this. This is all part of the post-human agenda that's currently underway, well underway. While we're worried about people in rainbow wigs, men in beards who are walking around nude in parades, yeah, it's really ugly and abhorrent. But it's meant to distract all of us here. And here is obviously posed photograph, not from the film, but a surgical procedure. Let me blow up the frame here. It's Ferdinand Desmoulins d'Eon performing craniectomy, right, in a surgical theater back in 1897. Right, posed, but a painting, a representation, but the author of this incredible article is making a point here. And this again is a still from Les Jours sans visage, 1959, by Georges Frangeux. I need to read up on him. He only did about, I think, 2 movies. I want to see what his background is. It's a really, really excellent classic film that needs to be seen, especially through the lens of the current transhumanist agenda. Here's another one. I selected this particular pick because it's a beauty treatment in Berlin, a beauty specialist. You thought that beauty salons were a recent 60s, 70s, 40s for wealthy women? No, no, it's been going back since the early part of the 20th century, and it reached one of its high point, the aestheticians in Berlin. And it so happens, not so happens, but it happens that Berlin was also the capital of sexual license and cross-dressing, transvestitism, right? Cabaret. You've seen the movie or you read the short stories, the Berlin stories by Christopher Isherwood, who went with his buddies from England to Berlin because it was so cheap. There was, Weimar inflation, and the English pound did very well against the Deutsche Mark, which I think was the coin. It might have been a different currency back then. And we were able to purchase a lot of sex from boys and women and trans, whoever else. It's the whole Weimar decadent scene. And of course, Isherwood had to be brought to the US so that he could spread his British style decadence within the Hollywood community, which most of you have at least passing acquaintance with, reading Us magazine, people, Vanity Fair with our noses pressed to the window, looking at the lifestyles of the rich and glitterati. So here it was in 1930, aesthetics, right? Let's move on to the next pick. Almost done. I was almost going to pass this up until I looked up what La Nébuleuse meant, 1939, because modern art is very much consistent with the deformation, the attack on females, which is what transvestitism and transsexualism and face transplant, it's misogynistic completely. It's a Sabbatean Frankist degradation of the female principle of women specifically. And here's an example by Raoul Ubach. I don't know who he is. I'll have to check him out. But this is at Le Musée National d'Art Moderne in Paris. I've been there. And yeah, I understand modern art a lot better now that I understand the French occultic tradition, right? And the late modern, early modern, surrealist Man Ray type. And by the way, Dr. George Hodel and his best friend Man Ray, they were also very much involved with the mutilation of female faces and female bodies. In fact, Steve Hodel, the son of George Hodel, devoted, I don't know, 5 or 6 volumes to talking about how his own father would create these carved up sculptures consisting of women's corpses, their bodies. And Man Ray, his real name was, I can't remember, but he was a Kievian Eastern European, and Man Ray was Anglicization, probably to disguise his Sabbatean Frankist roots, right? And he's if you study art history or even take an art appreciation class, you're going to talk about Man Ray and Jean-Paul Basquiat, Andy Warhol, and all these other people who are representatives of the dynastic bloodlines who want the deformation of humanity so they can rule over them. And we're in the final stage right now, unless we avert, right? Unless we change course. So let's move on to the next photo. Oh, by the way, that means nebuleuse means the nebulous, right? Right, which is supposed to be women. They're nebulous. It's also an astronomical, right? The Crab Nebula. That's what it's supposed to. And of course, it has metaphysical overtones or undertones or tones. And we have another piece of art. Looks very contemporary. It reminds me of recreational mummification being preached over down at UCLA School of Art by Professor Doran, who died of asphyxiation while practicing recreational mummification. Well, he's a Johnny come lately. They were doing it back in 1934. Hans Bellmer called La Pupille. It's a gelatin silver print at the um, Metropolitan Museum of Art, which, as you know, are sponsored by these high level money launderers and families, right? That's what that's all about. Go, yeah, observe, but understand what you're looking at, um, and read up on it and come to your own conclusions. And I think that's it, really. Oh, here's another shot by Georges Franjou, Les Yeux sans visage, eye without a face. This woman goes through mind control, all the stroboscopic effects. This is in the movie effects to kind of get her prepared for the face transplantation, just like Linda Evangelista or whoever else, Ashley Judd. They've got all the programming and the the entrainment necessary in order to undergo these very painful and ultimately humiliating procedures. And they're meant to be humiliating. That's why I don't call them botched. These are intentional assaults against beautiful women. And I'm not talking about just celebrity women. I'm just mentioning these women because their names are probably or more likely to be known to you. But I'm talking about everyday people as well, because it's meant to trickle down. The celebrities always set the pattern, and then we who like to ape celebrity will follow suit. Pretty soon there'll be a home variety, a consumer variety. Here's another one. We'll finish up real quick because I'm running out of time. Right, the woman in the case. She also has a ball gag on. Right, isn't that a characteristic of sadomasochistic play? We got to see that in the Gimp. Right, with Pulp Fiction, the greatest living and oldest fanboy. Right, Quentin Tarantino, the guy that grew up on VHS tapes and now makes movies based on all the crap movies he watched when he was a VHS clerk, probably at some Asian owned rental store before they got thrown, busted out by Netflix. And then finally, wow, did you know that there is a connect, according to the author of this article, not me, all right, don't blame me, all right, I'm just presenting this academic article, the advertisement for Elizabeth Arden Cosmetics, right? 1959. Oh, yeah. Right. This is, just a couple years before the topless bathing suit and, Rudy Ganlich, which I talked about him last Thursday or Tuesday, and his buddies, right? Hay and Will Gear, Papa Walton, the whole gay community and the Mattachine Society, and Jay Sebring, and later on, Vidal Sassoon, right? Okay. And then finally, last but not least, if you don't know who that is, that's Linda Evangelista. Oh, her name is music to my ears. And that sadistic looking character right behind her off her left shoulder is none other than Karl Lagerfeld. Yes, his father was a black marketeer who got condensed milk from the U.S. Army occupation, would peel the labels off, right? Pet milk or whatever it was, a gift to the American people, peel it off and create labels and then resell them on the black market. And was able to raise Klaus and his whole family on the proceeds. I'm sure they're involved in all kinds of stuff. And of course, he was one of the major fashion stylists, designers of the 80s, and maybe even lasted into the 90s. It was the decade of the designer. Most Americans didn't care or know about designers thanks to the British asset, the intelligence asset, Anna Wintour, and then Tina Brown, right? Her pretend arch rival, also British. The hoi polloi like you and me were told to worship all the designer people, right? Especially Klaus Lagerfeld, right? Who was famous for his one glove, parodied by Saturday Night Live and all that, right? So that's his one of his chief faces, Karl Lagerfeld, the sadistic, leather-bound fashion designer. Okay, let's take him off. I can't stand it anymore. All right. So, how did I get into this? Well, let me take a step back. Not going to watch all of this here because I want to show you how African American people are under attack. No, not just by gigantic black transvestites, by a more insidious program here that they're not really recognizing, right? But first of all, I got to show you where I came to an awakening about how this was a global phenomenon, and Japan is helping to publicize it as well as doing the basic R&D for this cell economy, blood cell, tissues, organs. So this, ladies and gentlemen, is a clip from the series anime, right, called Tokyo Guru or Tokyo Ghoul, which was adapted from a manga done by an artist named Akiba Shun. I don't know much more than that. And I was introduced to this by my students over at UC Davis because you got your average undergraduate. That's why I like talking to them. They're completely in sync with the popular culture of the moment. So they turned me on to, based upon the lectures they were hearing from me. They said, "My gosh, there's an anime on there and a manga that we all love." And by the way, if you look on YouTube or just look up Tokyo Ghoul, you see all kinds of fan activity centered around Tokyo Guru, right? If you want to check it out. So I said, okay, I will, upon your recommendation, look at it. And yeah, they were right. It's all about what we're talking about today in 2022. Uh, and also, this was from my on site experience when I first started teaching at this one campus in Davis, California, also the home campus of Edvard Tella, right, the father of the hydrogen bomb and Manhattan Project and all that. Right. They would have a yearly, at best, blood drive. Right. There would be the March of Dimes, and there would be the Red Cross, but once a year you give blood at the office. It was almost a joke, right? I gave at the office, but then starting around the last few years of my experience there at UC Davis, I saw these giant they're all AC run, right? Like 3 or 4 giant tour buses, right, end to end around um, the quadrangle by the coffee house and the library. And so my office was right on Hart Hall, was right on the perimeter of the quadrangle, the central quadrangle. So I saw it all the time. And they were doing blood extraction, blood harvesting. They call it blood donation. I call it blood extraction or harvesting. They were doing it every day of the week. And there would be these folding chairs out there and just students just sitting there looking at their iPhones, probably getting course credit in order to do this. So they bring a receipt. Maybe that's one less paper they have to write. Some of them were doing altruistically, like this character here. But anyway, it clued me into the fact that, hey, this might be the tip of the iceberg of something much larger. And indeed it is. Here's an example and if you want to look on TubeView, you'll find all kinds of examples. You'll find zero counter examples, in fact, but you'll see all these glowing, affirmative, self-satisfied celebrations of blood harvesting done by your average screaming and sometimes flaming, because they want to make sure that just because you're gay you don't exclude yourself, right? They want everybody's blood, because good blood, bad blood, tainted blood, polluted blood, graphene infused blood, doesn't matter. It's all going to be used in some fashion as part of this larger tissue economy. Here
The
we
blood
go.
because I knew that my donation could make a difference in so many different people's lives.
The more you do it, the easier it gets, and you feel strong after. You feel like you did something great.
This impact is just so lasting. It's not something that's going to go away. It's not something that's going to disappear.
Well, I've been donating blood since I was in high school, and so I always knew that there's just a possibility you can help somebody out. It don't really hurt, for real, so, and they give you food afterwards. I was like, why not do it?
The people that do receive.
Okay, you see they got all the young generation hooked in on it, right? I was loath to donate blood. I don't think I ever did it more than once or twice. And of course, the super elite, they harvest their own blood and they bank it and they keep it so that they know what they're getting. And by the way, this whole economy starts off with an effusive celebration of 9/11 when all these diverse peoples, Americans, came together and donated so much blood in order to, I don't know, assuage their guilt. She just sees this as a very important moment in the change of sentiment amongst Americans. Because in Europe, according to her, she's Australian. I think she's Australian. Maybe her co-author is too. I don't know. But in Europe, it's more of a welfare model where you don't get to have a choice. You're going to give some blood up to the state, whether you want to. In America, it's still voluntary. But they want to create voluntary compliance, just like with the mask or whoever else, so they can create this blood cell economy. So anyway, I'm not going to belabor that point. Just check out the videos for yourself. Now, let me get to the real core. This is where the African American community who are watching this, you guys sit up front in your chair, come to the edge of it, and listen to Brother Dick Gregory and some of his supporters. He had a number of younger men, black men, who were listening to the master. Right? They weren't listening to, the hip hop or Kanye or whoever else. They were listening to the African elder. That's Dick Gregory, as they should be. Right? These are the elders, not these other. They call them OGs, but they're like, the Black Godfather, Alvin. What's his name? All right, so here we go. Check out this. He comes on in a quick blip here. That's Dick Gregory here, and this talks about the phenomena at a deeper level.
Drive-by shootings is organ stealing.
I'm worth $50 million and I need a kidney. And kidneys are pretty sensitive. You got to find somebody who really got the kidney that matches yours. You think I'm gonna wait till somebody die for me to get one? If I don't get one soon, I'm gonna die. So guess what I'm gonna do? I'm gonna pay somebody to go research people. Okay, let's go look at all the black organ donors. Let's look at all the black people who got organ donor on their driver's license, which is why I'm not a friend of that. I say, if you want to donate your organs, put it in your will. Say that if I die, this can go to my family, my relatives, my friends, or whomever. But when you put it on your license, I believe you make yourself a public target. And so what did they find? We got a guy in Los Angeles. He has the same blood type as you, same kidney type as you likely. He healthy though, he ain't likely to die no time soon. He don't know you, so he ain't gonna give you no organ for free. So guess what we're gonna do? We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he was in a car accident. We're gonna arrange a murder that makes it look like he committed suicide. So the next thing you know, you coming out the gas station, boom, you get hit by a Mack truck, you dead, gone. You get taken to the funeral home, your family come to the funeral, they don't know that before your body got laid to rest, a little hole was poked and they pulled your kidney out.
A lot of people don't know, when you get arrested or even when you get convicted, a lot of times law enforcement or police will swab your mouth for DNA. And now they have your DNA record on file, they have your genetic information on file. And you have to understand, with law enforcement, a lot of times they'll sell your information to tabloids and, like, especially celebrities, they sell their information to tabloids and magazines and news outlets all the time. So it's not a stretch to believe that they won't use your DNA or your genetic information for nefarious reasons.
You, my son, cops come by and inform me you just been shot dead. You don't have jurisdiction over that body. That's the coroner. You can't get that body till the coroner release you. So we'll get released, we go down and pick it up, and I see all these cuts and these stitches. I just thought they was doing a routine investigation, following the bed. I didn't know they took your organs. I'm under all this stress, my son is dead. Now you buried now, I can't dig you up because the court got to have permission. Most of those cases is organ stealing.
It's been known for a long time, even back in slavery times, that black organs were considered superior genetically to other folks' organs. For example, whenever there's a transplant, okay, especially when rich folks get heart transplant, liver transplant, kidney transplant, they like white, they like black organs. We had a famous case in Pennsylvania, Governor Casey, who was one of the most racist governors who ever lived back in the late 80s, early 90s. He had a heart transplant. Guess whose heart they gave him? A black person's heart.
Down in Georgia, there was a case of an African-American 17-year-old kid who was found mysteriously dead at school. He died in the gym. They did an autopsy and they buried him. His family, they weren't satisfied with the results because they still wanted to know what happened to their son. They had the body exhumed, found out that his organs were missing and his body was stuffed with newspapers, and people are still trying to find answers. The officials down there in Georgia, they act like they don't know what's going on. There was another case out here in California. A young African-American man was found dead in Death Valley in the desert. All of his organs were missing. His liver, heart, lungs, kidneys, all gone. There's a case in the UK recently. A Somalian girl was brought over there for organ harvesting. They found out that they were going to harvest her organs and they stopped that. There was another case in Asian couples. They went over to Africa. They adopted a black girl. 2 weeks later, she was dead. So these cases of organ harvesting are just going on all over the world, and people are being real quiet about it.
Whomever. But when you put it on your license,
Autopsy and they buried him. His family, they
Okay, I got queued up a scene from Get Out, directed by Jordan Peele. It was released recently, 2017. And Jordan, who is African American, Jordan Peele uses the premise that you just heard Brother Dick Gregory lay out, which for me holds a lot of credence, a lot of water there, if you will, and extrapolates about the use of the black bodies. Now, I will go even further. And this is hypothetical. I'm just speculating, right? I can speculate, but I think a lot of the unrestricted flow of migrants coming from Latin America, Mexico in particular, is part of this our harvesting process, the intake of future organ donors, because these are mostly mestizo people. Right. There has been a multi-generational experiment in racial amalgamation between your European genetics, your indios, your indigenous, which are also Asiatico, Asia, and also African, right? So you've got all the different adflows. So they're kind of like a hybrid mestizo population, which I would think are kind of pre-tested for successful organ transplantation or marketing all over the world, because as you see, it's a international business. So let's take a look at this clip from Get Out and see how this one fellow is being set up to become an organ donor from a mixed group of people. There's an Asian guy in there too, right? There's all kinds of wealthy Illuminatis around the world that want black organs, and what I would argue are mestizo organs.
They weren't satisfied with the results because they still wanted to know what happened to their son. They had the body exhumed, are just going.
Oh man, it begins. You ready for this?
Yeah.
I'm not.
There they are. Right. Can you do that again?
Yeah, just smile all the time. Yeah, there you go. There it is. Oh, look, it's the Greens. Gordon and Emily, this is Chris. Chris, this is Gordon and Emily Green.
Chris, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you, Chris. Nice to meet you indeed. Oh, that's quite a grip.
Oh, thank you. You too, man.
You ever play golf?
Once. A few years ago. I wasn't very good.
Gordon was a professional golfer for years.
Oh, you kidding?
Well, I can't quite swing the hips like I used to, though. But, I do know Tiger.
Oh, that's great.
Super.
Gordon loves Tiger.
Oh, best I've ever seen, ever. Hands down. So, Chris, let's see your form.
This is Nielsen and Elisa.
Hey, how you doing?
So, how handsome is he?
Are you handsome?
Okay.
Oh.
Not bad. Hey, Nielsen? So, is it true? Is it better?
Wow.
Wow.
Fair skin has been in favor for the past, what, couple of hundreds of years? But now the pendulum is swung back. Black is in fashion.
Pardon me, I'm gonna take some pictures.
Sure thing.
Damn, that looked like Oprah Winfrey. Well, you see the setup there. This is kind of like a movie that came out in 67, 68. Right? Guess who's coming to dinner with Sidney Poitier and Kathleen Ross? It's a black and white couple, mixed race, mixed couple there, and they're going to dinner. And oh yeah, we're bringing a black man to dinner. How uncomfortable is that? And of course, this is kind of echoing that in 2017. But of course, who also wrote the movie, what Jordan Peele is doing is saying they're not really worried about the interracial dimension there, the dating situation. They're really kind of sizing him up because he's getting ready to be parted out to the different guests there who are arriving to check the Mandingo merchandise. When I say Mandingo, by the way, I'm echoing a whole body of literature, American literature, that talks about the sexually charged relationship between the African slave and the slave master. Mandingo is the tribe out there. This book was published in 1957. It was later made into a movie about 10 years later that talks about these interracial dynamics. And that's what Black Lives Matter still wants us to focus on. Critical race theory still got our head up our rear end in antebellum times and post civil rights movement, when we've already moved into the bioeconomy. We've already moved into the tissue economy, where the race part of it is, yeah, it's because you're fit and we want your organs. It's to that level there. And the people in the academic world need to up their game so they can catch up to what's really going on, so that they might fulfill their function as thought leaders instead of thought followers and people who are on the payroll of the foundations who are getting them to pound away at CRT and GLBTQ, right? But again, I told you that's coming to an end because I mock it at every occasion, and eventually a lot of them are watching my shows, by the way. They won't tell you, and they won't show up in the chat room here, but they're checking me out because I put it out there for them. All right, now I told you I didn't want to just tease you with Linda Evangelista, but let's check out how she is being remade into this martyr for this cause here. But they don't call it face transplantation. They're presenting it as a case of malpractice, medical malpractice. Of course, it goes much deeper than that. So here's how it's reported in the MSM.
This was a woman who famously said, "I don't get out of bed for under $10,000 a day." But the last 5 years have bankrupted her soul. Linda Evangelista, now 56 years old, has been in hiding after a botched cosmetic procedure left her horribly disfigured. She signed up for something called cool sculpting, a common non-invasive procedure that you can get at the dermatologist's office. But within a few months, the places on her body where she wanted smaller, like her back and her neck and her thighs, they all became a whole lot bigger and harder and numb. This is a photo that she gave exclusively to People magazine, where you can see some of the damage that she points to at her bra line. And when she asked her doctor if these deformities could be fixed, The soul-crushing answer was no.
There you go. As told to People magazine. I wonder which large transnational company, probably British or German, owns People magazine, right? So that's Linda Evangelista, right? Now she's going to be the poster child for this whole movement here. Of course, conveniently ignoring the larger problem of face transplantation and the new cell line tissue economy that's going on here. Now, lest you think that Dick Gregory, brother Dick Gregory's bugging out, and this is just a lot another black paranoia, right? All these little conspiracy theories coming out of the hood. Well, let's take the example of, as I promised you earlier, Ryan Singleton, the male model whose mama wants to know what happened to his organs.
The model. That's Ryan Singleton, a young aspiring model. His story begins right here in Atlanta, where he was raised by his mom.
Somewhere between the third and fourth grade, he figured out that his initials of his name, RTS, backward was STR, which meant star. So he started then making himself into a star.
In the fall of 2010, Ryan left Atlanta to pursue his dreams of modeling in New York.
He landed 7 shows during Mercedes Week in New York, and that's huge.
After success in New York, Ryan and his 2 friends, Antonio Faison and Jared Davis, set their sights on Hollywood. Their adventure was all caught on camera as they filmed their pursuit of fame for a docuseries called Are We Famous Yet?
The inspiration for our docuseries was simple. It was Ryan. We wanted to document his journey in becoming a model.
Once they hit LA, things happened quickly.
We were basically in the inner circle. You know, we were being invited to things that we kind of just saw on television and we're like, okay, now we're here.
Then Ryan left LA, returned to New York, and suddenly was married. This is a photo of the ceremony. Next to Ryan is Real Housewife of Atlanta star Cynthia
Black male transvestite
Bailey. But that's not who he was marrying.
I found out on social media, Ryan has gotten married to a man twice his age. I don't even know who this is. I don't have a clue as to what's going on.
Right.
Sugar daddy pimp. He'd be pimping them out to people in D.C. and Hollywood, just like Ed Buck. Buck be in prison because he was picking up young black men, poisoning them, drugging them, and then watching them overdose. He's finally got convicted thanks to a African-American female community activist.
Ryan married Keith Brewster, but the marriage didn't last, and Ryan returned home to Georgia in the spring of 2013, where things got more mysterious.
He says, tell me the truth. Okay, something bad is gonna happen to me, isn't it?
Then more mystery. He flew to LA, met someone, then rented a car and drove himself to Las Vegas. Then before driving back, he called his mom.
I said, boy, you okay out there? He said, yeah, I'm getting ready to come home. I said, okay, what do you need? He said, I need you to go in my room and get the $100 out of there.
Ryan's mom wired the money to him. Then she received a phone call from Ryan's ex.
I said, well, Ryan went to the West Coast and told me not to tell you. He said, oh my God, his life could be in danger.
Brewster never told Ryan's mom what the danger was, but it was real. Ryan's car broke down in Death Valley on the ride back from Vegas. He flagged down the highway patrol, who dropped him off at this convenience store, and then Ryan vanished. 74 days later, his mom received another call, this one from investigators who found Ryan's body.
She said, ma'am, Ryan didn't have any organs. He didn't have any eyes, he didn't have a heart, he didn't have any lungs, he didn't have any liver, and he didn't have any kidneys. I said, what? That sounds like somebody took my son's organs and sold them on the black market.
The autopsy report answers very few questions. The cause and manner of death, both undetermined.
There you go. So if you, and I'm not speaking of you specifically, but the assertions of Brother Dick Gregory, who is passed on, he's now with Jesus, but he made an incredible contribution by going straight to the communities and warning us. And thanks to YouTube, we have records of all his comments here, warning us of all these dangers here that are embedded in the guise of normalcy, of altruism, really. Because look at You saw the clip of the guy who says, "Yeah, I want to donate blood. I'm giving back to the community." Right? I'm not advising or saying one way or another whether a student should or should not donate blood. You make your own decision. But I do ask that you inquire as to the whole blood banking economy that's behind these three tour buses that are on the perimeter of each campus, probably around the United States. I don't think Davis is alone on that. Because, and I'm saying this because in my own preparation for this talk, I found lots of literature that details the blood donor economy. I'm calling it blood harvesting economy. And there are reports ranging from the Rand Corporation, right? You're familiar with the Rand Corporation. If they're doing a report on it, they're studying something they're really interested in figuring out how to weaponize, because it's an Air Force operation, Rand Research and Development out of Santa Monica, but it's a civilian research wing that's funded by the U.S. Air Force, which is Pentagon, which is now NATO. So you can bet that blood is really important in their system of larger globalist post-human control, right? That's what's going to be taking the place here. So I found a lot of literature there. I found a lot of surprisingly, and this is good. This is a good sign. I'm finding a lot of excellent academic literature in the humanities, not just in the sciences. And remember, I already told you in the previous talk, anybody, he or she, female or male, presents themselves as a so-called bioethicist, you can discount anything that's coming out of that person's mouth, anything that's written. Bioethics is a scam. It's a sham. It's something to acclimate ourselves to the Tokyo Ghoul model of existence while it's being, at the same time, while it's being imposed there. But I am seeing some literature that's being produced in the humanities, education, in the schools of education. I'm seeing some activity here, recent activity, Intimate Borders, the Ethics of Human Organ Transplantation in Contemporary Film, published a couple of 2012, right? They're talking about ethics now. What is the ethical question? I don't understand. This is where we're going to get bogged down again if we listen to these people here, the bioethicists. Also, by the way, this book was also published by Duke University Press, which is one of the chief university academic presses that are promoting transgenderism and transsexualism and the whole post-human agenda. Duke, which is founded on tobacco medical research, human research money. So they're publishing there. That's why I'm skeptical of these authors, even though their analysis is generally correct. But here's another one coming out of Duke. It's called Liminal Lives, Imagining the Human at the Frontier of Biomedicine. And on it goes, right? So it's not that the academic world is oblivious to it. It's just it's being drowned out by InfoWars and Ben Shapiro and Stu Peters and all the other supposed independent conservative voices that are just hammering away on Milo Yiannopoulos and Transvestite Celebration Day, Pride Month, and all that, right? As you hopefully see by now, because this is like the third in a series by this time, if you want to count the previous two shows, or maybe even going back to the previous week. It goes much deeper than that. And thank you. I appreciate you trying to follow this argument. It's very difficult on emotional level as well as intellectual level to wrap our minds around the fact that the highest stratum of the bloodlines, they don't call them bloodlines for nothing, the highest stratum, very thin stratum of the bloodlines, have this in store for us, and they bought out all the major institutions to make sure that it happens. There's one factor that they did not account for, or maybe they did, but they probably underestimated it, and that's you and me, blood. Yeah, blood. We're going to get done. All right. So, with that happy note, I'll leave you for next Thursday. I think I might talk about Santa Cruz again as another death spot, because I've come across a really excellent book that I want to share with you. Thank you for your support, my Patreon supporters. And if anybody's interested in finding more articles, more information, more discussion amongst ourselves, then you'll definitely want to subscribe to the Patreon at as little as $5 a month, right? You're the ones that keep me going. All right. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We'll see you soon. Thank you. Bye.